Welcome. This week we are getting ready to go over lessons 93 through 96. So we've been working on subtraction. We did this from like lesson 84, and we'll be continuing subtraction for 3 out of the 4 days this week, and then we'll transition into some other things. So just remember, the subtraction that we're doing is just a basic introduction. We're going to hit it hard in level C. So if they're doing okay with the subtraction here, great. If they're struggling a little bit, you know what? It's okay. I suggest playing some of those subtraction games that they enjoy, but keep it light. All right? Because like I said, we're going to really tackle this in level C. Before we start with this week's lessons, let's go see what materials will be needed. You'll need the geared clock, the abacus, the math card game book along with the basic number card deck, a dry erase board, your part whole circle set if you use it in a page protector, the worksheets, and their math journal. Lesson 93, Finding the Difference. If you notice in the objectives, that's one of the terms. Difference is going to be a word that your child's going to learn about today. As you see in the warm-up, they start off with 2 sums practice. That's found behind the math journal in their workbook. They just only have to do those 2. Again, you could do this earlier in the day. You could do it later in the day. It does not have to be done during math time. For the activity, finding the differences on the abacus, this is where you could use your part whole circle set, or you could use your drawing board. Now, I don't know about your book, but my book does not list the drawing board in the materials. So just know that you will need it if you want to draw on it or write stuff on it. I really appreciate how Right Start helps us, the teacher, lead our child to think mathematically. We're not just telling them the answer. And you can see that here by the questions you'll be asking as you work through this subtraction problem. I also like how the abacus is used in this lesson. Look at your first diagram down on the bottom of that page where it shows find the difference between 6 and 4. And you enter 4 on the abacus on that top wire, you've entered 6 on that bottom wire, the child can easily see, I shouldn't use the term easily, but your child should be able to see that the difference between the 2 numbers is 2. And so they could see how if they had 6 and they minused 2, they would get 4. And if they have 4, they could add 2 and get 6. And then the last problem on this page hopefully will not stress your child out because we're getting into some double-digit subtraction, but they should still be able to apply what they're learning, but now they're going to apply it to a double-digit number problem. The lesson ends with a game called Harder Difference War. It's S13 in the math card game book. You're going to use 60 of the basic number card deck. So you're going to use 60 of these cards, just random cards, but no 10s. Take out all the 10s and then just count out 60 cards. This is something you could have your child do, practice their counting. If you open your math card game book, this is on page 97. I just wanted to use the example they give you to explain. So after you do your 60 cards, then you're going to deal them out, or you can split the deck in half until you see what's equal and compare. So example, if this is my deck, I could split it in half and then I can try to get it to be equal. And then I know, all right, we have the same amount of cards rather than have to deal them out. Just makes it a little bit easier. Anyway, this is a war game, but notice it's Harder Difference War. What you're going to do is you're going to flip over 2 cards. As you can see in the example, they have a 1 and then they have a 6 below it. Now, we're not working with negative numbers yet. So let your child know that if the number on the top is smaller than the bottom number, they need to treat it as if it has a 10. So rather than this being 1 minus 6, it's 11 minus 6. And if we're going to get mathematical, the top card is the minuend, and the next card is the subtrahend. I just call it the top card and the bottom card. But if you want to be mathematical, you can use those terms. And if they need to use their abacus to figure this out, let them use the abacus. Notice in the explanations right across from the game, if a child needs an easier game, then play S12 with them. S12 is called difference war. And rather than subtracting numbers, they're going to compare the difference between the two numbers. So if you notice in the book, the top cards are 1 and 6. So what's the difference between 1 and 6? And again, they enter that on their abacus, 1 on one wire, 6 on the next wire. They can see that there's a difference of 5. So while they are subtracting, they're not really subtracting. And then the person who has the highest difference. So like the other example here is the 6 and the 4. Well, the difference is 2. So the person who has the difference of 5 will get to take all the cards. Lesson 94, solving compare problems. The activity actually will start with their worksheet. So they're going to use their worksheet and read through the problems, and then you are going to help guide them to think it through mathematically. Don't tell them where it goes, but ask them questions to help them figure out where it goes. And those kind of questions are what's included in here for you to ask. But you know, we all have children who might need a little bit of more help. So just know that. Just know you might have to break it down a little bit smaller for them into smaller steps. This lesson does not end with a game. However, if you'd like to play a game, you could play one of the games you played the previous day if they need that extra practice. If not, just enjoy your time. No game. Lesson 95, addition and subtraction equations. Again, your sums warm up. You're going to work with your clock. You're going to review addition strategies already taught. Then your activity starts with comparing addition and subtraction. And I like that we're going to have to ask our children questions to help them understand the difference between the two. These questions are pretty basic. It's only based on what the children have already learned. The last activity on this page is recognizing an equation. That's really important. Children need to know that an equation has an equal sign. So 4 plus 2, if it doesn't have equals 6, that's not an equation. If you just say 4 plus 2, no equation. 4 plus 2 equals 6. That is an equation. And it gives you a little bit more information about what an equation is in the explanation to the teacher. In this lesson, we talk to them about an equal sign. Then we talk about a not equal sign. It's important to know that the not equal sign goes in one direction up here. It starts at the top and goes to the bottom. We do not do unequal signs this way. Now, it does show in the book how road signs can go either direction. But when we're doing math, our equal sign and our not equal sign needs to look like this. You get into the activity of making equations and even into the worksheet. Just a little hint, if you have a child who struggles with this, because it's kind of like a puzzle, and it might take some children a little bit longer to understand what they're doing. With my boys, I found that sometimes I had to give them a clue. So I would give them time to look it over themselves. And then if I saw that they were not getting anywhere, I would say, Could I give you a clue? Would you like a hint? And if they said yes, I would give them the equal sign. I would show them where it goes. Then I would give them time to figure out what the rest of it was. Because usually once they knew where the equal sign was, then it was a lot, they were able to see the solution a little bit easier. And for this one, for this activity, it's pretty straightforward. Now it gets a little bit more challenging when you get more than 2 or 3 numbers that you're using, and you have to add some or subtract some, as you see in the worksheet down below. If you notice, the last few problems on the worksheet are going to give more than 2 numbers. Again, if they're struggling and you've given them the equal sign, ask if they'd like another hint. If they say yes, then put in one of the signs. Put in a plus or put in the minus, just depending on which one you think would help them better know what the other one would be. But don't be really quick to give them the answers, right? Give them some time to try to process through themselves. Of course, they could use the abacus, but don't jump in really quick. However, you know your child. You know when they're to the point that they're going to need some assistance. Last lesson for this week, lesson 96, continuing patterns in the hundreds. All right, so we're done with our section on subtraction. We're not going to have a lot of subtraction in the warm-ups. So it's going to be up to you. If you feel like your child would benefit from having 1 or 2 subtraction problems given to them, because some children need a lot more review than others, then add them in. This lesson, continuing the patterns in the hundreds. Also, anything about continuing patterns in the tens. This comes in so helpful when they get into their addition, their double-digit addition, or even if they go into some triple-digit addition, just depending on the problem itself, right? But here's an example. If we have 64 plus 9, they make 9 a 10, right? It becomes 73 because we took 1 away from the 4, we gave it to the 9, made it a 10, it becomes 73. So with my granddaughter, she is not really good continuing the pattern by tens. So if she has 63, it's really hard for her to know that the next 10 is 73. Now she can do it like 10, 20, 30, 40. That's fine. But when we get into these other numbers, she's struggling with it. So that's where I'm seeing how valuable this kind of lesson is. Now this lesson is working into the hundreds. We're going to see the pattern in the hundreds. So don't discount this lesson. It is a great lesson for giving that foundation and making mental math that much, do I use the term easier after what we just had our little talk on? But I think I will say easier. I do believe there are things we can do and practice that will help us make it easier to solve math problems. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but it can make it easier. There is a difference. And do notice when you look at the worksheet, you can see it in your book right now. Even though we're working in the hundreds, notice what numbers are changing. Not necessarily the hundreds, the tens, or even the ones. This is invaluable. It really is. And you'll see this as you get more into your children doing double-digit addition and subtraction, to be able to easily know what is the pattern of what's 10 less than 500, 490. For us, yeah, that comes pretty easy, right? But it doesn't come easy for our children, not all of them. And I'm seeing that in my own granddaughter. But I also know that the more we do these kind of things, the more practice we have, the better she is becoming at seeing the patterns. Same for your child. We're in the home stretch, guys. We're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So join me next week as we go over lessons 97 to 100. You know, there's only 140 lessons. We're getting there. Until then.